What's up, guys? It's your girl Hassana back with another episode of The Elephant in a Pink Room. I pray that this episode finds you guys in good spirit and in good health, and that you are really taking the time to embrace what this season has to offer you. Welcome back to those of you who've been here before, and welcome to those who are new. And I just want to give you guys a little treat before I get into this episode. I actually recorded it and it is on YouTube. So if you guys would rather see the visible version of this podcast episode, just go into my YouTube channel and watch it there. But don't forget to come back onto the platforms that you listen to it and just like it. Okay, so I so excited to be back recording actual videos. And it's surprising because I never thought that I would be this excited, but I actually am. This season just has been a whirlwind. It's been a whirlwind, but I count it all joy, and only because in order for us to grow, like, we have to experience some things, right? We really have to experience some things. We have to, make ourselves available to be able to be plucked and pruned and all of these other things that, we had going on. And one of the things that I wanted to do was I wanted to commit to, being completely submitted to God and allowing him to do the work that, I needed to have done, because it's one thing to go through a lot, but you also want to learn through what you're going through. So you want to learn through all of these things. Like, you don't want it to just become like this hamster wheel if you just keep going through the same thing over and over and over. So, I just had to take a step back and be like, God, listen, I need you. Like, I really need for you to work in my life, like, work on me, forget everybody else, because I've spent so many years, like, just worried about other people and what they was doing and why they was treating me like this. And it's just like, no, work on yourself. Like, allow God, because I've come to understand that I can't change other people, but I have the ability to change myself, and in order to become a better person, I have to actually become a better person. Enough of the victimization, always being a victim. Everyone's always doing something wrong to you. And even if that is the case, like, God, I need for you to help me, to make me stronger, to be able to sustain the persecution, the rejection, the backbiting, the slander, all of this other stuff. Like, I need to be equipped. I need to be in a place where I could thrive through even the mess that happens, And one of the things that used to really bother me a lot was that I always felt like I was by myself. I always felt misplaced, misunderstood, kind of like not surrounded by, just my surroundings. I just always felt was not serving me. And one thing that God was telling me was that, you have to, like, he's given me my family. So I'm not even talking about my family and things like that, but I do have a choice on who I bring into my environment at this point. Back in the day, like, yeah, sometimes circumstances bring people around you. Sometimes people trauma bond. There's things, and especially when you're in a world, you're going to connect to worldly people, right? And then once you start to pull away from that, and once you start to change, like, that's going to change too, because now you're not going to be drawn to that environment anymore. So now you need a new environment. So that was one of the reasons that I actually created the Elephant in a Pink Room, because I've always felt kind of like I didn't fit in, and I wanted to create a platform for people just like myself. And, once I got on social media, you guys may have heard this before, me speak about this before. Like, I started to learn that there are other people out there that's like me. And that's, like, completely different from the people that I'm used to being around. Because once you're used to being around a certain people, you start to think that that's the world. Like, this is the hand that I've been dealt, so I have to work it. But that's not necessarily true. And what God is telling me is, like, when I start to heal you. I want you to have complete healing. And for all of the things that I'm replacing, I'm going to replenish, right? He's going to restore. Like, he promises restoration. Like, that's a part of the promises. But in order to reap these things, there's work that we have to do. Like, we have to believe that God can do it, and then we have to allow him to start to do the work. And I remember one time, you know, I was in my feelings. You know, me and my feelings was like this. We was like best friends, like all the negative feelings. And it's crazy because what I've noticed about myself is like, it's so easy for me to connect to like negative feelings at one point when I was at, you know, that stage in my life, than positive feelings. But now, you know, it's different. And because I've allowed God to start doing the work and to do the work in me, I'm starting to see things differently. And then once I started to pull away from the environment that I was used to, it did get lonely, you know, because it's a difference too between wanting to do certain things, not wanting to do certain things, and you're in that environment, as opposed to like, I don't know, I'm trying to think how to explain it. So, you know, the things that you used to do back in the day, like, it was fine, you know, and when you get in those environments, it was fine because you just went with the flow of it. But it's different once you start to change, because you don't even want to be surrounded by certain things. But then it's like, what do I do? You know, I can't go to the club no more because I don't even want to go to the club. But then what else is there to do? Then if I decided like, oh, I want to go to a Broadway show, like, I don't have anyone that I could call to go to a Broadway show with, you know. And sometimes I'm gonna tell you, you're gonna hear this, sometimes that be lies too, you know, that be things that the enemy put in our head to make us feel like we by ourselves. Because the same way we're growing, people even that we know from the past, they're growing too. So you might not think that they want to do the things that you want to do, or they into the things that you are into and things like that. But you'll be surprised on the work that other people are doing behind the scenes. But I remember I was in my feelings and I'm praying to God. I'm like, God, help me. Like, I feel so alone. You know, like, I was just going through a lot, like, when in terms of like relationships, whether it was friends, romantic relationships, all of these other things. Like, things was just like going haywire, just ripping apart. And I just felt like I was just being ripped away from people. So God told me, I heard him say to me, didn't I tell you I would supply all of your needs? And I was like, huh? You know, because like, for me, you know, I'm like, what? Like, yeah. But he was like, that's everything. Stop putting me in a box. Like, the same way I could provide food for you, the same way I could put a roof over your head, the same way I could have your vehicle still driving when it's trash, the same way that, you know, I could put money in your pocket, give you provision. I have also supplied your needs when in terms of community. And I was just like, oh, because now I'm looking around like, well, where they at, you know? But he was telling me, like, you got to stop looking for what you want. You know, you have to allow me to show you these people. And then I remember he dropped in my spirit the story of Moses, Aaron, and Hur. You know, Moses was called to lead the Israelites out of Egypt or whatever. And, you know, I remember there was this battle in the Bible. And if I could, I'm going to try to put it in the show notes where I got it from. But there was this battle, and every time Moses' arms went down, they would start to lose because he was tired. But then he had his brother Aaron and he had Hur, and they was holding his arms up. Then once his arms went up, they started to get the victory. They started to get the better end of, you know, the war. And they was there just riding with him, you know, holding him up. And he was telling me, like, I have given you your Aaron and your Hur. And I'm like, you're going to have to tell me their names because I don't know. So when God gave me these two people, I was sitting there like, wow, like and it's crazy because these aren't people that I knew for a long time. These aren't people that I necessarily had relationship with, you know, but I started to understand why. Because when you're on this journey, you need those people. You need those people that could provide godly wisdom. You need those people that's going to pray for you even when you don't ask. Like that God, because God will put you in people's spirit and people to pray for you, you know, and that's what he was doing. Like he was putting these people in my spirit. And like even with Moses, like, you know, Joshua was there too, you know what I'm saying? So it was just like he had people in his corner, because even when he started that journey and he thought that he wasn't going to be able to do it because he was insecure about his speech impediment or whatever, like God told him, like, don't worry about that, I got you covered. And that's when he told him, like, he's gonna send Aaron with him, his brother, to be able to help him along the way. So he's going to provide these things for you, you know. And then he started to open up to me about community and how having community is necessary, because even when Jesus Christ walked this earth, he had 12 disciples. When he created Eve because he did not want Adam to be alone. And although we do have God, you know, he's our foundation and he should be the foundation of anything that we're trying to build, he still want us to have relationship. He still want us to labor with the same kind of people. So then that had me starting to think, because I kept hearing community. So you know me, I'm a nerd. So I'm like, let me, you know, look this word up, because I wanted to get a better understanding, to kind of get more of a clearer understanding of what God was trying to show me. So as I was looking at community is a group of people living in the same place or having a particular characteristic in common. And there are 5 characteristics of a community, which is shared identity, shared purpose, a common objective, shared interests or passions, common behavior. Those are the 5 characteristics. And once I started to think about it, I was like, wow, you know, they say living in the same space, but that doesn't mean y'all have to necessarily live in the same dwelling, like the same apartment or the same house. But it's just like y'all have to be living in the same environment. And like for me being a woman of God, I look at that as the kingdom. You know, we are dwelling in the kingdom together, and with common characteristics, with certain characteristics in common, doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be exactly the same. Like I'm not going to have like 50 Hassanas in my community, but we're going to have a shared entrance. And as I started to really sit and allow God to open this community up to me, he was also telling me, like, and everybody probably wouldn't have the same interests with each other either. You know what I'm saying? Like I could have a community that's built on the fashion that I love, a community that's built on the spiritual kingdom, you know, that I love. I can have another, like these are things that we have in common. I have God in common. I love fashion. I have children, you know, maybe that's something that we have in common, but there has to be things in common. And then I started to think about like relationships that I've had in the world. A lot of times, like the people that I hung with, what we had in common was trauma, you know, whether it was having parents that were addicted together, whether it was, you know, having the same kind of like sexual appetite, or having the same feeling of loneliness, regret. Like those also draw you to people as well. So that's why we also have to, once you start to kind of like change, you have to also look at the relationships that you have had in the past, because like I said, some of those people are doing work to change themselves as well, but there are some that aren't. And when you start to heal, because sometimes we can't understand why we could have a relationship for 30, 40 years and then just out the blue, once we start going in a different direction, like it's done. That's because the connection has been broken, because the trauma that connected you to, you no longer are operating in that trauma. So that's no longer a part of your life. So that's another reason why relationships will end, whether it's romantic, whether it's platonic, even family relationships. Like sometimes the only thing that really connects you to a family member is just the fact that you guys are blood. So that's what we have to keep in mind. Like we have to really examine ourselves for where we are, and then once we start to feel this break from, the people that we are normally around, we have to understand why. Like, and maybe it could be that you need to break away from the commonality of the trauma and reconnect for another reason, because that happens also. I remember God was telling me about relationships, right? And he was telling me, like, yeah, you may be in a relationship with someone and it may not be going well, but sometimes what may need to happen is that you guys were connected in the world, and once you transition into the kingdom, like, you have to break that worldly connection. So the things that drew you to this man when you were in the world, that's not going to be the same thing that draws you to him in the kingdom. So you have to kind of like sever that mentality and sever that kind of like idea of this man, and then you have to see him in a different light. So you're going to have to be able to see him in the spiritual light that that things are. So sometimes that happens also. And I know usually, when I do my podcast episodes, I usually give like 3 tips, tricks, and or conversations. But what I want to do with this one is I kind of want to just continue to talk about this, and I kind of want to dig a little bit into these 5 characteristics of the community. So share identity. And when I think of share identity, I really think of like, and I'm speaking from a spiritual aspect, because now my mind has been changed. I have the mind of God, the love of God, and all of these other things. So my mindset has changed. And when I think of shared identity, it's the identity of Christ. We always made in his image, right? And we all, he has given each and every one of us an identity in him. And once you learn what your identity in him is, you will connect to people that has that shared identity. So you'll find yourself being connected to more people that's actually in the kingdom. Which, I mean, to be honest with you, that's how it should be. Even though Jesus walked with sinners, and he loved, they say God is married to the backslider, and all of these other things. But it's not for us to dwell there. It's for us to help to evangelize. Like, it's for us to, like, us being around certain people should make them want to change too. So a shared identity, like sometimes, and that's probably why racism is so active, because the shared identity. I notice a lot of times, like when I was starting a new job or school or whatever the case is, like most of the time the Black people, will gravitate to each other, and it's just like, but why? Because that's a shared identity, because I can identify with you because you look like me. A shared purpose. What's your purpose? What's your purpose in life? My purpose is to serve God and to be used as a vessel in his kingdom. So that would be a shared purpose that I would have with someone else. Or another thing, that I love is education. I might share that with someone else that has the same mindset as me in those, in those terms. But the purpose has to match. The shared purpose with your coworker is the fact that you guys work together, and your purpose is the company's business. Whatever it is. I'm in the buying world. So my shared purpose with my coworker is making sure that we have the product that the company needs in order to satisfy the customer's needs, right? So that's a shared purpose. A common objective. In life, we all should have an objective. And that's what God had to open up to me. Like, what is my objective? Like, what do I want to do? My objective is to serve God, to be an open, willing vessel for him to be able to operate in me. And for some people, or I might meet other people whose objective is different, like maybe, another objective is to start to create wealth, right? Let's say that that's an objective. So you're probably connected with people that want to invest with you, do business with you. If you have a company and all of these things, but that's the objective. The next one is shared interest or passions. Reading, that's why a lot of people have book clubs and they invite people to have the same interest in them. But all of this stuff is building community, right? That's why you have like a lot of people on these platforms, like they'll have the main core platform, but they'll start to build these communities based off of different interests. Like you may have a fashion blogger who may have a book club because she enjoys to read, or she may have a community for creatives where you could just talk fashion. Like these are shared interests, common behavior. Behavior is the things that you do. I'm trying to think of something that could be like a behavior that will kind of like draw you to people. Like maybe, well, not really. I was gonna say maybe you be on time a lot. But it's just the things that you do. Like, if you have the same parenting skills, if you have the same, just like the things that you do every day. Like if you go into the coffee shop every morning, like if that's your thing, you might build a community on that. Like, have friends that you go get coffee with, friends that you go out to eat, go to the club, whatever the case is, with common behavior. And I thought that this was important because I'm like, I don't think we really are intentional about who we surround ourselves with. Which I get it, because it's just like, is it that, like some people might say, is it that serious? Like, you just be around people, you be around people. But what I've learned is that it's very important. And it's very detrimental on, the impact of your life, because the people that you are around or that you surround yourself with, the communities that you build, can either help or hinder you. And you don't want it to hinder you, even if I wasn't in a kingdom, right? Even if I was in the world, like I still need to be surrounded. I still need to be in healthy communities where I could thrive, where I could grow, where I could be fed, as well as where I could do the same thing, where I could serve. Because you want to be able to be successful. In order to be successful, community is very important. You want to make sure, if you're a parent, that your children are surrounded by the right people. And it's all based on the communities that we build. And it's crazy because I have a cousin, and me and her have had these conversations. Back in the day, like we was always kind of like conditioned to believe like you just accept people for who they are, and they are who they are. You just put up with it, right? But I'm learning that that's false. Like that's false. In community, we have the right and the authority to correct. We have a right and authority to confront. We have the right and authority to love. We have the right and authority to pour into. So it's all of these things. I never was the type of person that wanted to be around people that felt like they couldn't say certain things to me, whether I like it or not. I'm not going to like everything that people say to me, or all of the ideas and thoughts that people have, because sometimes too, it may not align with how I think or how I feel in that moment. But that's where respect for the people who you are surrounded around comes really important, because this person isn't trying to harm you. Now, and it's different when you're in a community or when you're in an environment where they, it's like the survival of the fittest. Like, we just go on a battle, best man wins. I want to be better than you. I don't want you to prosper, but I want to be there for your downfall. Like when you're in those crab in the barrel environments, it's different. But genuinely, like in the perfect space, like you should be able to respect the people that you're around enough to know, number one, if they say something in correction or counsel, even if you disagree with it, that they're not doing it to harm you, but it's through love, right? Through love and kindness will I draw thee. And it's through love, because love corrects as well. But also we need to know, like, okay, Even if they're saying something and I don't agree because it's not true, or it was misunderstood, or whatever the case is, they just have the wrong information, and then that person should have enough respect for you to allow you to like correct, or allow you to be able to explain, and with open ears. A lot of times, like, it's about listening, and really about allowing people, creating an environment and a space for people to feel safe and comfortable regardless of the conversation. It's easy to feel comfort and safe and snuggly when everyone's laughing, having drinks, toasting, and stuff like that. But what about those situations where the uncomfortable conversations have to happen, or where conversations occur where people don't agree? Because even though you want to have shared and common, because a lot of these characteristics start with either shared or common, even though you want to have all of that going on, it's not going to be in every single thing. But the beauty in that is that you learn. That's the beauty in being around people that have different ideas and thoughts as you, because you learn. But community is very important. It's a social unit, that shares something in common. You have the same customs, the same identities. Like, you have the Indian customs, the African customs, and they come together to share, and to share these experiences, the food, and all of these things, that your values, your beliefs, all of these things are important. You need to surround yourself with people that share these things. It's a source of social connection and a sense of belonging. Like, we all need to be able to connect socially to people, and you want to belong somewhere. And in order to belong somewhere, you have to have things in common. But there's no island, like, God did not create not one person to be by themselves. Even if you was born into a family and you lost everyone, that does not mean that you are going to be alone for the rest of your life. You could lose a husband, you could lose a child even. But that's why community is important, because you have people. You're always going to have people to draw on to lean on, to even to help build your spirits up. Sometimes, like, I get around my family where your heart just becomes filled with so much joy, and that's needed, is necessary. Like, God wants us to have peace. He wants us to have joy, happiness, all of these other things. And I believe that is very necessary. And you know what? I'm going to backtrack a little bit, because I know I said that I was just going to kind of like dig a little bit into these characteristics, but I did want to just, give some advice, some going forward things. And what I would say to do is that when you are going on the journey to community, the first thing that you need to do is build a relationship with God, so that He could give you your identity. He'll give you your characteristics, your culture, all of these things that you need in order to connect. Once you start to build this relationship with God, what will happen is that you need to build a relationship with yourself. I realized that the reason why I really couldn't show up for people the way that I wanted to be shown up for was because I didn't love myself enough, and the commandment that God does give us is to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. But what He was showing me was that a lot of people can't do that because we don't even love ourselves. So a lot of times the way that we show up in these communities and the way that we show up for other people are a reflection of how we feel about ourselves. So a lot of that has to be dug up, and you have to deal with a lot of the things that, that's hindering you from being able to build fruitful relationships. Because when you're in a kingdom, everything that we do, everything that we lay our hands on is supposed to be fruitful. It's supposed to grow. It's supposed to be prosperous. And the reason why some of us don't have this is because we haven't really built relationship with ourselves. And then once we do that, and we start to, think about building these communities and things like that, we have to be very intentional in making sure that we're surrounding ourselves with people that connects to our purpose in life. that connects to the things that God is calling us to do. Because there's nothing like you wanting someone to show up in a space that they don't understand and could care less about, or even that goes against what they even believe, you know. And a lot of times that's probably why people can't show up and do things, and the reason why, you know, relationships don't work. But I just wanted to share that with you guys. I'm glad to be back to YouTube, and I'm praying that I'm just able to do it all the time. But there's just been a little bit, you know, going on with me moving and all of this other stuff. But I'm gonna let you guys go because my storage or my devices is acting up, and I just need to let it go. But until next time, keep it stylish.